I hiringa nau e roto ki nei tau ki nei pia, tuaki nei au i te tatau o taku whare, ko te rangi kaupapa tatau o tā whirirangi, i te pū moso moso te kaupapa o te toi o ngā rangi. Ke paua tūtaki ni tau rurui tau rurui mai wharikura. Kapu kapu toaro, kapu te ngāta tā se ngātoro te hiri te tatau o tēnei whare. E tūngo nei nā toaro nā tōpe e ri hua maroa tau e. So nau mai, hara mai, whakatau mai, I wainganui I te kurapara whakawai nei, I runga I te karanga kaupapa o te Koronga. So hello everyone, welcome, thank you for coming along today. And this is our first presentation for the year for our Te Koronga Indigenous Science research theme. So we had the illusion of summer before with the windows open, with the curtains open there, but now they're closed to the reality that is winter. And a shout out, we're trying to go Facebook Live for the first time, so hello to the multitudes watching out there as well. And so this is our, as I said, our first presentation within our seminar series of our Te Koronga Indigenous Science research theme. So ko wai aho, he uri tēnei no te nota, no ngā pui, ngā tiwai, ngā te kahu o whangaroa me te roro hoki. So my name is Anne-Marie, for those, I actually think I know almost everybody in here. And my links are to the far north of the North Islands, and I grew up in the far south of the South Islands, and I live here now and have, as my age, I feel like creeping up on me for the last 17 years. As a student, and myself alongside Dr. Holty Harford over there are the co-directors of the Te Koronga Indigenous Science research team. I can see some members of our steering committee here as well, Jeanette Carter there, Chris Hepburn and Christina Hall, as well as others who can't be here as well. And of course our fabulous administrator, Mina, who pulls everything together, of course. And so today I'm going to be talking about one of our National Science Challenge Sustainable Seas research projects, which is coming to a conclusion now. So that's been a 1-year project. Myself, Ngāhui Misa and Hawati were researchers on that project. And this comes right into an element of our theme, which is one, trying to understand mātauranga or Māori knowledge derived research. Interface work is the second branch of the theme, and then the third is that non-Māori research that Māori have an interest in. So I'll be talking today about our work in the National Science Challenge Sustainable Seas and understanding mātauranga derived work and the potential for interface work too. So blends of Māori knowledge and non-Māori knowledge. So I've put some white bits of paper around there, some felts and others, and there's extras there if anybody wants it. So what we'll be doing toward the end of the session is thinking about some of your thoughts and ideas for the direction of the theme as well. So it might be that you have an idea about wanting to deliver a seminar. We have ideas around our internships that we've run over the last year, publications, for example, maybe research projects. So there's a potential idea of floating an Indigenous Science minor within the Bachelor of Applied Science or the BSc that many of us have talked about. Maybe new positions for colleagues or wanting to work within these spaces. So there's some opportunity there to write down any of those ideas, and then we can see collectively how we can move toward achieving something. So our project within Sustainable Seas, this is what I'll talk about today, provide context of the Sustainable Seas National Science Challenge, looking at the aims specifically of our project, Hui Te Ananui, which is the name of a whare of a house of Tangaroa, the god of the ocean. Talking about the two aims of our project. I'll just describe how we conceptualise in our project mātauranga, this idea of Māori knowledge in its broadest form, some opportunities and risks, benefit in terms of mātauranga and interface research, and then wrapping up with thinking about some thoughts in terms of the direction forward for the research theme. And I'm hoping that I'm not going to be talking for too long either, but I do get quite excited, so I might hopefully not go on for too long. And then we'll break after that, have some food, hot drinks as well, and then just opportunity to chat amongst ourselves also. And so I should probably have started with some health and safety. If there's a fire or an earthquake, okay, we assemble outside, we go down the stairs and assemble out by Smithers Gym, so opposite here across the one-way and the bathrooms are downstairs on the ground floor as well. So our National Science Challenge is Sustainable Seas. So it's a 10-year program of research that has a multitude of different arms to it, and the overall objective that all the projects and programs within Sustainable Seas should be meeting at the end of the 10 years is to enhance the utilisation of our marine resources within environmental and biological constraints. So our project was one of the first cabs off the rank, so to speak. So we went into contracting around November 2015, and so we started in June of last year. And our project is specifically within this program of research. So these are all the programs of research here, and then there's some cross-program research objectives as well. I'll only be speaking specifically about the Tangaroa program, which is research that is primarily by Māori for Māori within the context of Māori research in the marine environment in general, and moving more now toward the case study area, which is top of the south of the South Island, and as well as the lower North Island from Taranaki and Taranaki across to Wairarapa. So that's a chunk in central New Zealand. So we are within the Tangaroa program, which is led by Linda Faulkner. So our project had two aims. So our overall aim, so our project title is Hoisa Ananui, Kaitiakitanga in the Marine Environment. So Kaitiakitanga in its broader sense is about guardianship. So both in terms of spiritual guardianship as well as the literal and physical guardianship. And in our context, we're referring specifically to the marine environment. So the two aims of our project, one were to examine mātauranga, Māori knowledge associated with the marine environment through archival research and examination of key texts. And the second aim was to undertake a desktop examination of literature reports, frameworks, legislation relating to the marine environment for Māori. And so I will just, because the project was 1 year in length, and it's quite, so it turned out to be quite large, which was great. We got quite, Māori have a huge body of knowledge that sits behind the importance of this connection and relationship between Māori and the marine environment that stretches back to before the beginning of time. So as you can imagine, our project really is just about scratching the surface of trying to understand that knowledge within the context of the challenge, as well as Māori knowledge more broadly. So I'll only focus on this first part, the first aim. So thinking about some of the and thinking about how we define mātauranga. So this is sometimes a bit tricky for what is it that we're meaning by mātauranga. So for us, in our project in particular, we define it in terms of the body of both knowledge and practice that are derived from Māori worldview. So for me, I have a particular stance around worldview, which is specifically drawing on my own whakapapa, my own genealogical links to the far north, and draw heavily on the work of Māori Marsden. And so who talks about worldview in terms of the central systemisation of conceptions of reality that give rise to our values that a culture agrees upon, that a culture assents to. So that's how we think about worldview. And in our project, we specifically looked at pūrākau, so our ancestral stories, the importance of the connection that we can, as Māori, trace our descent back from ourselves as humans through to our gods, and then prior to the world we live in, the creation of our current world. So some of our creation stories and the such like. We also looked at karakia as well, so incantations as a form of Māori knowledge, whakapapa, so genealogy, mōteatea, looking at chants, waiata, songs, whakatauki, whakatauaki, looking at our proverbial sayings, both when the author is known and when the authors are not known. So the methods that we undertook, so were In this and aim 1, we undertook a discursive examination. So all that means is that we sourced, collected and read a whole lot of archival material, and we looked at commonalities and differences. So we focused so the Hocken Library, of course, is a rich source of archival material for Māori, and we drew on the material located within the Hocken relating to the marine environment, using key terms and phrases such as tangaroa. And so if tangaroa wasn't coded, then we would use God, God of the ocean, God of the marine environment, God of the sea, for example, moana, and different phrasings to see what archival material was there. We also found a number of wonderful linkages across the Pacific as well, and change of dialect and things like that. But I won't go into that today. So we also looked at the National Library, too, at the Alexander Turnbull Library, and also spent, Ngāpuia, our research fellow, also spent some time at the top of the South in Blenheim, so looking at some material focused right in the case study area. And then we examined during particular on policies, expertise, looked at some key texts. So those scholars interested in looking at Mātauranga in this way, in particular in the Ngā Motiatia series volume. So if you're into Shakespeare, okay, this will be a close association you could gain, I suppose, to Shakespeare in terms of the beauty and the depth, the metaphorical language of Te Reo, of Māori language, and in particular understanding that worldview that sits behind that language. And so that's particularly within our Motiatia. And so looking at what is within those texts and those Motiatia, those chants in particular that can give information and knowledge and understanding about the marine environment. And then we also looked at Ngā Pipiha Ngā Tupuna, another wonderful text also that contains a number of whakatauki, a number of proverbial sayings, and sayings when the authors are unknown. So our main finding, okay, unsurprisingly, our main finding was that, so this is a picture that Ngāpuia took on Haunui Waka, so on the canoe, the large voyaging canoe Haunui, that talks about this important connection, this Koronga that Māori have to the marine environment. And in particular that kaitiakitanga, so this notion of guardianship within the marine environment, it is based on worldview, guided by whakapapa and tikanga, so guided by that genealogical link, in particular that governs how Māori want to manage and engage and conceptualise the marine environment in a word tikanga, and that does express that sacred bond, that sacred connection, that umbilical cord between Māori and the marine environment. So of course we come into the very end of our project, and so like others who work within the context of Mātauranga, there are a number of issues that we have to address. So that's what I'll talk briefly about really. So probably one of the main issues is around intellectual property. So who owns the Mātauranga that has emerged within our project, for example. So this is the space that we're moving into now, both physically or both literally in terms of what's happening within our project and it coming to an end, but also challenges that many researchers have to face if you're wanting to engage with Māori, work in terms of understanding Mātauranga, and then also the exciting opportunities that I'll talk about next in terms of thinking around interface research as well. So this is from our contract that we put in. So I guess to provide a little more context around the National Science Challenges. So these can see all the National Science Challenges, I think there's 10 or 11 of them. So right from the health research, where you're looking at from a better start, healthier lives, for example, into the technology challenges, technology, what was the one you're in? SIFTI. So science for technology and innovation. There's a building better homes project, and then there's the environmental ones. So our one, sustainable seas, there's a deep south one, so looking at the between the southern New Zealand, and that's most of them. Science and biological heritage is another one. So the government set out, MB, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, set out in this paradigm shift of trying to think of a new way of how to generate research. So move into being a researcher-led, this idea of researcher-led process. So we were heavily involved, myself, Chris, Holty and others, in setting up the challenge. And so one of the challenges from the challenge in particular is how do you deal with, how does the Crown, how does the government, so MB, deal with Māori knowledge? So how does the government put, as the government and its Crown agents, how do they put measures around so that they can support and advance Māori knowledge, in particular safeguard Māori intellectual property? And so, in the start of our challenge, those questions weren't being answered yet, because part of it is a new way of going about doing something. So this is a practical example of the things that we did within our project to actually, even though the mechanisms weren't set yet, was how do you ensure intellectual property, both of those communities that you're working with, but of the things that you may find as a researcher. So this is an example of what we did, is we went into contract negotiation, is to change the intellectual property rights of the project. So for those of you who are already working in Māori projects, or looking at going to work in projects, you're wanting to think about what's some framing and phrasing of how we can actually safeguard intellectual property. So this is what we did. So it ended up, as I said, went into contract negotiation in about November 2015, and then we weren't funded until June 2016. So about a 6-7 month process of trying to negotiate, and the stickiest one really was around IP. So for us, the stance that we took and still do is that, importantly, for Māori traditional knowledge, of which we include mātauranga, is that access to that information has to be provided by those communities, those iwi or hapu, from where it derives from. And so this is the space that we're moving into now that we have all of this data collected, it's sourced it, and is in the written report form. The challenge really is, for the wider challenge, is thinking about, okay, so now, how does the material that we have found within the Tangaroa program actually translate out into those other programs of research? So from that figure that I showed at the start, which I'll just flick back to if I can. So for example, and these are the things as a challenge that we're having to work through. So in our program, so we have this mātauranga defined work quite tightly written contractually, some IP obligations. So how was it now, say, dynamic seas, so, which is quite a science-intensive program of research, how will they now gain access, whether they do or not, into the work that we've got? How was it, say, valuable seas, so how Māori and all New Zealanders value their connection to the marine environment, how will they, say, gain access to what we're doing? And then also, conversely, how is it that we can be involved and that our work can support those in the other programs? So these are questions and conversations that all the challenges are having, not just sustainable cities. And how do you actually, one, maintain the integrity of the work that's from mātauranga derived, but also gain benefit from it without damaging that integrity? So for us, and what we've written in our concluding chapter, our concluding section of our report, is really in that interface section, that interface part. So how is it that you can draw upon Māori knowledge and use it in such a way that it's positive so that all parties are benefiting and gaining from that? So an important text to view or to look at some of the findings from Y262 in particular. So Y262, so the flora and fauna claim that was heard by the Waitangi Tribunal, and their reports and findings from that, where they set quite in an environmental context and many others, they set quite a number of positive guidelines, as well as practical implications for how people can engage. They use the framing of taonga, which is much some of the work that Jeanette does. So looking at this notion of taonga, so some of the work that we've created from our project is positioning the marine environment as a taonga, so that it is an entity of importance, both spiritually and practically. And so this notion of taonga, so of course, in the Waitangi Tribunal context, in Article 2 of the Treaty of Waitangi, Māori are guaranteed tino rangatiratanga, with this notion of self-determination of taonga. And so we're positioning in our work that the marine environment is a taonga. And so this report by the Waitangi Tribunal provides a number of good practical suggestions for how we can go about engaging in this type of work. So some of those suggestions are, firstly, is to think about the question of ownership. And so they describe in particular that from a Māori perspective, it's not necessarily that Māori are not saying that we own the environment or that we own the taonga, but what we do own is the control of the taonga, which is important. And so within that text anyway, it's providing some language, some understanding and examples for how we can move forward, specifically in our project. So for example, we trying to think through the logic that Y262 have produced is that we're not saying necessarily that we own the mātauranga that's within it, because that's counterintuitive to a Māori way of thinking, but what we do own is the user rights, so that we own the access to that. So they're two quite different things. So for those that are interested, particularly in the differences between tino rangatiratanga, this notion of Māori control and sovereignty, of full and exclusive ownership, then you can see that they're quite different things in particular. So that's an important point, and for any projects is around thinking, is it about ownership or control? So part of what Y262 provides also is thinking about the taonga and the Tiaki obligations and relationships to that particular taonga. And so how those Tiaki or those guardians, so Tiaki can be thought of both in terms of spiritual guardians of that. So from where I'm from, we have a taniwha, a Māori denizen. I heard Poti Miller say that once. So a Māori denizen, who is, we believe, is a kaitiaki of our places. And so you can also have kaitiaki both as people. So in thinking about our project, for example, so we, Poti, myself, and Mahinga will be the kaitiaki of our taonga, which is some of that mātauranga within our project. And then trying to make the connection back to those communities who are also the kaitiaki of that. And so I guess another question is, as researchers within government-funded projects and programs like ours, and for those of you who are working in interface research, is trying to disrupt the understanding that we have. Are we Crown agents as funded by the government within, so this example, funded primarily through MB and NIWA, who are a Crown Research Institute. So how far down does the connection go between the Crown as the government, or our New Zealand representation of our government, down to us? And therefore, what are our obligations as Crown agents in this context to actually safeguard Māori knowledge and Māori research? But importantly, in the treaty context, if we are Crown agents, then it's not only about protection, it's also about advancement of Māori knowledge and how Māori are involved in that moving forward. And then finally, the Y262 talk about the importance of to assess the levels of control. So is it that Māori need to be in the driver's seat, depending on what the taonga is that's being managed? Is it that Māori need to be involved in an advisory capacity in the projects, or is it that Māori can give away or to have a proxy for ownership, for control of the project or of whatever it is that you're doing? So I certainly recommend for those involved in or Mātauranga derived as well as interface work is to look at Y262, in particular the first volume of suggestions from the fauna and flora claim that does give rise to a number of practical suggestions that people can use. So how well this is being taken by the research community, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. But it certainly does provide practical obligations. You know, we won't get into, this is just what I was joking with the other day, it's my pulling list coming out. We're not going to go into some of the treaty related things and all of that. And the role of the Waitangi Tribunal in terms of trying to influence the Crown. But it does provide a number of good practical solutions that people can draw on when you have these questions around intellectual property, trying to understand the level of Mātauranga within your project or potential projects, and then importantly the role we have to actively support and advance Māori aspirations. So, in coming to wrap up, this is a slide that we used when we launched our science theme last year, I think it was, when we launched. So this is a photo of our wee canoe that many of you have been on, Potaruruku, at Pūmaitangi out there, and then that's Aoraki, Mount Cook in the distance. So this is on Lake Pukaki, which is probably about -8 degrees or something today. Out there, so in Lake Pukaki, Mount Cook. Here, so really this is what some of those bits of paper are there for, and just to have some conversation and discussion while we have something to eat, and I'll take some questions. But it's around thinking about our current challenges that we have within our science team, any aspirations or thoughts that people have moving forward. I talked about some of the things that we're thinking about as a steering committee, and always wanting to hear more and more from what people are wanting to do. So we're also starting our seminar series up, so once a month on a Thursday, this day, into the future, as well as having, of course, our wānanga that we had last year. So this year, our steering committee, we decided that we would focus internally. Okay? There's a lot of pressures, I know, on staff, same for us in PZs, for our management of change, and I know other people are doing that. Are going through that process. There's the support services review, of course it's affecting general staff, and as well as many pressures on Māori communities and those that we work really closely with at the moment. So we decided to shift gear to focus internally on what we're doing. And so we're thinking around having internships again over summer, looking at different, should we be doing some clustering of work around leading some research projects people might want to do. Around our 3 themes: Mātauranga derived, interface, and then non-Māori work that Māori are interested in particular. And so, just to recap in terms of the overall direction of our theme, these are our outcomes of our theme to refresh on. So the top, our relationships. So the importance of our relationships that we have internally, as well as what we might each have externally, both within those communities, nationally as well as internationally. Towards the haumata, this notion of excellence, of what we're trying to go about doing, that we're building capability. So over summer, within our theme, we hosted 7 interns whose work was within this broad context of Indigenous science, which was wonderful, and we're hoping to have them report back in November, potentially. And then we also, of course, had the whole team was successful in a Ngāpai postdoc, this is Gianna down there, and a Ngāpai postdoc. And then we have another student, so now we're going on to the Vision Mātauranga Connect, and Matt here also going on to a Vision Mātauranga Connect, and other capability that's being built, and maybe there's things, ideas and aspirations people have around that too, that we can focus our work on. So it's Koronga, so our network, so Koronga is the word for net, okay, so growing our network, what we're doing across the world. Te Pai Tawhiti is looking at research, so both that what we're doing now and that which we're all hoping to do in the future, whether we can do things collectively, groups of people can do things as well as part of what we're doing, and Pākamo, so the seed is around funding. So is it that we want to use some of our money that we have that sits within our theme? So what do we get? 40,000 a year, 25,000 from the research office, 5,000 from our wonderful Dean, Professor Douglas Booth, and then 10,000 from our equally wonderful PBC Sciences, Professor Richard Barker as well. So that's our 40,000. So this is that we want to put up some funding, some seed funding for projects. All of that is, of course, open to whatever direction we want to take collectively as part of the theme. So, huri noa, te whare, tēnā tātou, ka soa. So thank you, everyone, and to our probably one viewer. And yes, so if we have, people have any questions, we can open the thing up now. Yeah. To open the. Yeah. Open it up. Yeah. Give us. So if you've got any questions, fire away. Then we can have some food, and people could write down any ideas or thoughts that you might have. Is that a question?
There's a question about the talk.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the end of your protest with the National Science Challenge. I had a quick look at your website last night. I don't know why I was bored. What's happening with that? It seems to be, I had a look at some of the projects and what's going on. It didn't seem to really excite me. I see the perhaps moving water, asking people about the values, about how they have to feel about marine life and stuff like that, rather than having data to empower communities to actually make some what's happening. Update, or is it a lost process?
Yeah, it is hard. I think that if I go back to see it, so we had a really good symposium up in Wellington. I think a lot of people were feeling like that, not really knowing what was happening across the whole challenge. So it was a 2-dayer in Wellington, and in hearing how all the projects are going across the whole challenge. So that's the first time that all the projects, every project had been together across all the programs. So some programs, they might have 5 to 10 of more projects that could be from 1 year to 5 years within it. And so